go ahead and get started. Today we're going to talk about the multifamily program. We have a program in existence, but we're making a few changes. And so without further ado, oh goodness, it's going a little crazy, guys. Sorry, you're getting the preview here. I'm not sure what's going on. There we go. Let's see if we can go down one page. Awesome. My apologies. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about multifamily and then also shared solar, which is our virtual net metering program. We're increasing the program incentives. We're going to talk about who is eligible as far as customers to participate. We've made some strides in the utility side interconnection. So we'll have some guidance on how shared solar projects can be interconnected. We'll talk a little bit about paperwork and processing improvements that we've done, and then we'll talk about when this program is about to go live. We are also hoping to field most of your questions at the end. So if during the presentation you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and know that we've reserved time at the end to address them as well. Okay, so let's talk for a second about the multifamily housing market in Austin. It's a really exciting space to be. We're getting a lot of new development. Here on the left is information from Austin Energy's Green Building Program. This doesn't count for the large multi-story projects downtown. But for your average multifamily housing buildings, we're seeing a lot more permits pulled. We're seeing a lot more projects coming online, and we're anticipating that to increase. Over on the right there, this is from, sorry, switch those things around. That's over on the right, and over on the left, you'll see just the general permitting forecast. So what you can see is that the majority of multifamily housing here is actually going green. At least with our green building program, which is a good indicator. They may also be good solar projects as well. Just recently, we rolled out our capacity-based incentive program for commercial programs, for commercial customers, and that's going really well. So we are following up on that with this multifamily program, hoping to increase the solar that we're providing for our multifamily housing. So next, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about what multifamily is, and then also what we term shared solar, which is a phrase that's unique to Austin Energy, so you may not hear that other places. So let's talk about it for a minute. So we are counting multifamily as properties with 2 or more units within a TCAD property boundary. In the past, we have allowed for, if a developer was working on a development with multiple single family housing to go through our program, but we're changing that up. And so at this point, projects that you want to enroll into this multifamily program have to be multiple units within one property, preferably under one roof, right? We will still serve the single family housing. We do that through our residential program. So what is shared solar? So that's our virtual metering billing functionality. It's not necessarily a program on its own. It is part of the multifamily program, and it's something that we just finished a pilot phase, and now we're moving into a soft launch, and then hopefully we'll make it more available to everybody. The key about shared solar is the idea that you have one interconnection that serves multiple units in a TCAD property. So if you have an apartment building, maybe you have 30 units, you've got one roof, you can install the solar on the one roof, make one interconnection, and then we will take care of the billing virtually on our side to make sure that the credits for that solar system get distributed to all of the units. So this has taken a little, we've been working on this for a long time. It takes a little time to get it to roll out, in part because it is going to require that utility side interconnection that David will speak to a little bit further down. So the shared solar program, well, what is it? Well, it's not a program. Yeah, it's not a program unto itself. It's a feature of the multifamily solar program. So we're really excited to get more participation in that, and we'll talk about that in just a second here. But for the recap of the pilot, what we've done so far with shared solar, again, that's the virtual billing with fewer interconnections that reduce the cost of installation. From 2018 to 2021, we've helped 6 multifamily affordable housing properties, that's MFAH, and we've been able to hook up 539 individual units with solar, but with fewer interconnections. So that's pretty exciting, and we're hoping to expand on that. So one of the reasons, besides talking about expanding shared solar, which we're excited about because it should reduce costs and help us serve people better, we are also increasing the incentive rate. So the multifamily program incentive is a capacity-based incentive. It's 60 cents per watt for just your average multifamily program. And if you happen to be a multifamily customer, and if your customer happens to be a nonprofit, which means they cannot take advantage of the federal tax credit, then we've increased that rebate amount to $1 per watt. We're not capping, obviously multifamily properties can have different numbers of units, so we're not capping the total system size, to serve multiple units. However, there is a per unit cap of 5 kW AC. I don't imagine that will be too much of a problem with the nature of multifamily roofs. And then that check that will pay out is a one-time check that will issue after the system is completed and passed inspections. It's calculated as the watts DC multiplied by the applicable rebate level. Rebate levels are subject to change. And the payee in this case is going to be the applicant and not the contractor. So anything that is a big difference from our previous program, we've written here in orange. And I understand that is a bit of a change. So the payee is always going to be the customer. We're not giving checks directly to the contractor. To be eligible for the program. So we've split this up into 3 sections. We've got the regular multifamily program. We've got a section for that nonprofit bonus, where basically it's the regular program. You just need to be a nonprofit customer that cannot take advantage of the 30% tax credit. And then also our shared solar, which because we're doing this soft launch phase, we're putting some restrictions on that. So as stated, you need to have multiple units with sole ownership. For shared solar, we are looking for buildings that are 5 units to 500 units. And a shared solar could be nonprofit or for-profit. The big deal for shared solar is that they need to be listed in the Austin Tenants Council Guide to Affordable Housing in the Greater Austin area. So this document, which we'll send out after the meeting, all of these are hot links. They can take you over to that guide. And there's so many properties that meet the description of affordable housing in the Greater Austin area. So they don't have to be nonprofit. They just need to be serving low-income housing. And the other thing for shared solar is that participation in the multifamily program. Oh goodness, someone's gonna have to help me out with the other P here. Mary, are you on MPP?
It's the Multifamily Partnership Program.
There we go. Yes. Thank you, Sarah. So for the Multifamily Partnership Program, we'll need to make sure that any of the shared solar candidates are participating there. And then what is not eligible? Again, differences we've put in orange. So single family dwellings are not eligible for this program. Commercially or commercial metered community spaces, that's also not served by this program. So you would just take those through the commercial program. We do not want to be serving repeat code violators as far as property owners. And we are also not serving any type of leased system. So in the past, we've looked at making exceptions for government or for other maybe like equipment leases, but under this program with our very generous incentives that we're doing here, we are not, we've kind of closed the door on that one. So let's talk about our soft launch. And Sarah, since you're here, if you want to take it away.
Yes, happy to do so. Thanks for picking up the ball at the beginning. Sorry about that. So as Val noted, we are moving from the pilot phase of shared solar into what we like to call a soft launch. The purpose of a soft launch is to ensure that our processes for moving applicants through the shared solar pipeline are robust and scalable, because the last thing we want is for those recipients of the solar credits to be getting incorrect bills, or for, us to create unnecessary headache for a lot of contractors or customers. So just that's kind of why we're like taking the next step up. What does the soft launch look like? We are hoping to move 6 projects through, or up to 6 months, or either 6 projects or 6 months, whichever takes longer. My guess, based on how these projects go, is that we're looking at 6 projects. For the first round of these, it will have to qualify to participate in the soft launch. The property will need to be listed in the Austin Tenants Council Affordable Housing Guide. I'm going to shorten it because it's a very long acronym. And the 15th edition, which is the latest edition. We have it linked multiple times in this presentation, and can send it out as an addendum to the presentation, so that those of you can, and those of you interested can double check and see if your projects or your properties are in there. This is just so people understand, this is an expansion from the previous requirement, which was very specifically affordable housing, generally the 80% of LMI threshold. So we're actually expanding beyond that. And it also includes frameworks where the building owner or the property owner is not part of a not part of a nonprofit institution. So, I know that there are some complicated ownership structures out there that have prevented some of the, now eligible properties from participating in the past. And we want to open it up to try and get through this soft launch period, as quickly as is reasonable. If we find ourselves, a little bit past the 6-month mark and do not have visibility on, 6 projects, we will consider expanding that scope. But for now, I think, this, hopefully you guys we sort of are aware of 2 that are in the pipeline. So, hopefully we can see, 4 more entering the pipeline between, over the next few months, and kind of get visibility on what it will look like to move to the next step. So yeah, just I put a little timeline here at the bottom that's like a quick history. For some of you who don't know, shared solar has been in development since 2016 as a concept. As Val noted at the top, the pilot was initiated in 2018 and was completed last year. And we're excited to roll it out as a soft launch this year, and then look forward to doing a full launch. My hope is actually that we are able to do a full launch sometime in 2023, but I would not expect it to take longer than, till 2024. So, of course, that just depends, as I said, on us getting projects into the pipeline and pushing them through the system to double check all of our systems. So I think that there's some confusion, and we'll come back to your question at the end, Jeff. Sorry, I was looking at how it was written. We'll come back to that at the end, because I think there's some confusion about how the sort of split incentive problem that is pervasive across multifamily. But let's push through the rest of the presentation, and then we'll circle back to that. Next slide. David,
Sure.
do we have you online? Okay.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump in here. So this slide refers to the physical interconnection process required to build a shared solar installation. So these types of installations are a bit different than traditional behind the meter solar installations that we normally see. So for a shared solar type of project, the physical interconnection of the solar array is going to be ahead of the Austin Energy meter. So we call this a utility side interconnection just because the solar equipment is interconnected on the utility side of that meter. So this requires some different considerations from multiple standpoints, including design, the review process at the initial stages of project development, as well as some additional considerations for going through permitting and inspections processes. That process is not one that is currently documented in Austin Energy's guidance, including the distribution interconnection guide. So we've been going through an update process on our end. That update process is nearing completion, but we are going to be making changes to the distribution interconnection guide in order to provide more guidance on how to go about making these utility side interconnections. So the planned release for these updates is going to be probably toward the end of Q3, which just started. So sometime in the summer of this year. But we'll have more details on the specific guidance that's being provided when we present the full program rollouts in May. So this guidance will include points on how to physically tie in on the utility side of the meter in order to meet our standards. So from the design standpoint, what are the acceptable methods for making that physical interconnection that we will allow? As well as additional documentation and consultation steps that you'll need to take at the initial stage of project development. So documentation to submit to Austin Energy groups, as well as consultation that will be required with our solar inspectors in order to make sure everything proceeds according to what we need to see at final inspection. We'll also include guidance on unique impacts on the permitting and inspections aspects of the projects. So just some additional requirements that will need to be met for utility side interconnections, as well as some new diagrams that we'll be adding to the distribution interconnection guide. So similar to the type of diagrams that are in the guide now for behind the meter systems, we'll also be including more detailed visuals on what the physical interconnection and what the equipment configuration for a utility side interconnection will look like. So expect some more information on all these aspects when we present the program rollout, and then when the interconnection guide updates are actually published during the summer. It may not answer every single question you have about the aspects of building these interconnections, but we're hoping it at least starts you off in the right place, and we can provide further guidance as needed. This should at least set the process rolling for you. I think we can go to the next slide. I'll throw it back to you guys.
Yeah, thanks, David. Yeah, that's all tremendous stuff. On a less tremendous note, but still very satisfactory to me, we've made some processing improvements in EECP, which is the portal that our contractors use to submit applications for our solar rebate programs. So under the new program, we're just do one building per enrollment. You'll just have to enter the specifications of the solar array just once per building. We will require less documentation. And the inspections, we'll do the inspection process that we're doing right now, where those are requested through the website. And you'll get increased communication about the project through there. And then also we've developed a process to facilitate entering new builds that is a little less of a headache. So we'll cover more of these things in our rollout meeting that will happen in May. But just real quickly, if you've processed multifamily enrollments under the old program, you should expect a facilitated process with the new program. Yes, it will mirror more the commercial CBI program if you guys have been entering applications there. And we're anticipating to save massive amounts of time on all ends here. So that's pretty exciting. And it brings us to our recap of this presentation. Program incentives are being increased. However, that rebate check will only go to the applicant. We're not sending that out to contractors at this time. For project eligibility, our multifamily program is no longer serving single family dwellings. And for shared solar, we had some affordable housing restrictions last time for this soft launch. Please look to the guide to affordable housing in the greater Austin area. And we'll send out a link to that after this presentation. Shared solar is underway, and we're excited to have that interconnection process better documented and ready for our soft launch for potentially projects this summer. And then EECP processing, hopefully that's a better use of everyone's time. So we're doing a lot to make installing these projects more affordable and less work. As far as our schedule, we'll have another presentation on May 6th, and that will be our contractor training for, sort of the paperwork part of the process. So we'll have a customer agreement form as we do. We'll have our program guidelines. We'll show you where to find things on the website, and we'll show you how to process things through EECP. And then starting Monday, May 9th, we will start accepting applications. So at that point, we've covered most of what we wanted to share with you all. And we'd like to open it up for any questions you all have. I know the chat is, it's a little tough for me to access the chat right now, but yeah, let's go through those questions.
So I wanted to go ahead and start at the top to clarify a couple things. I realize, thank you guys for your patience, because I recognize that we are a little bit in, having trouble seeing the forest for the trees here. So we just launched right into talking about shared solar, and I did not make what I think will be a helpful graphic to understand what we're trying to do to specifically around shared solar to facilitate sort of equity across the solar space. So I do want to at the top here acknowledge that, the multifamily space generally does suffer from, a split incentive problem. So we, as the utility, can provide incentives to the building owner. That's what the $1 a watt or 60 cents a watt is to provide this sort of upfront cash incentive to the building owner to help offset the capital investment of installing solar. But if that building owner, if they're going with shared solar, that building owner will not receive the solar. If they are either going with shared solar or doing discrete interconnections for each unit, which we have many builders in Austin who also do that, they are not receiving the longer term benefit of the value of solar credit on the bill. And so we do recognize that value of solar component that in the residential space can contribute over the long term to a payback model is not there in the multifamily scenario. That is part of why we have increased the capacity-based incentive to help kind of boost engagement with solar as we have all of this incredible growth happening in Austin. There are some, softer reasons why building owners go solar, and I actually think that there are probably many people in the audience here who might be even more equipped to speak to, what inspires a building owner to go solar. But, some of the things that we've heard are, LEED certification, advertising reasons, advertising yourself as a green building, or having that solar as a, being able to sort of recoup some of the cost, by having, in sort of non-affordable housing scenarios, like having that be a feature that people are willing to pay a little bit more for the sort of environmentally conscious. And then we have heard from our a lot of the folks who participated in our pilot program, all of whom were affordable housing, that there are, grants and other ways to sort of support, going green on affordable housing buildings. So this is, the incentive, the capacity-based incentive here is meant to be a supplement to other available funding sources for that, in particular in the affordable housing space. But the big win here for us, and what we hope is for our customers and the community, is the opportunity to distribute solar credits in a more equitable manner. Historically, rooftop solar has largely benefited the, middle income and wealthy segments of the population. And of course, we as an institution want to keep our eye on ways to facilitate access to those benefits for people in the affordable housing space, and really even beyond that, people who just don't own their own homes, which is an increasing segment of the population here in Austin and indeed across the country. So yeah, that's thank you for your patience with us on kind of being stuck in the forest and not thinking about giving that high level summary, but hopefully that gives some more context to kind of some of the topics that we have discussed here. And I will put together a diagram that helps better explain the relationship between the financial relationship between the utility and the building owner and the solar and the tenants and so forth for the kickoff meeting.
Are we allowed to ask questions verbally?
Please do. Yeah.
All right. Guys, thank you so much, first and foremost, for being thought leaders in the space. I think what you're doing is awesome. Are you guys able to go back to those incentive slides so I can just kind of remember?
Yeah, absolutely. And we will also be sending out this presentation, so you'll have it handy as well.
So, because I'm trying to figure out the difference between the shared solar, which seems like hey, I'm going to do one larger installation. I'm going to do a utility side interconnection, and then I'm going to have virtual net metering that then applies an incentive. But so it's not clear to me are you still getting the per unit rebate level when you go for the singular interconnection and virtual net metering, or is this only if you're applying directly to that like individual metered units that you can get this rebate? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. So subject to evaluation, obviously, the rebate is applicable across either shared solar or either all of multifamily, including shared solar, is how I should phrase that.
Right.
So some of the feedback that we've gotten from our stakeholders and other participants is that, I mean, it is just because of like property and roof size constraints and the fact that actually Austin is building up more than out, if that makes sense. We kind of tried to set the cap at a level that we thought is unlikely to be reached, right? In most multifamily situations, we're trying to balance the 100+ unit multifamily installations that we want to put all of the solar on with the duplex scenario, right? And so trying to make sure that we're reaching, that that the thumb is on the scale of the larger the larger facilities, if that makes sense. So that cap is, so when you go shared solar, part of the process is informing us how many units there are in the building and what the desired allocation is amongst those units, if that makes sense.
Sure. So, and then in shared solar, how do you then how do you split out and virtually net meter, right? Because I think if I understand this correctly, I'll just give an example. We've got 100 units, and myself as say the property owner decides to go the shared solar route. So I've got one. My understanding is this would be one utility side interconnection. So do you then say, is it a percentage wise? You say, okay, whatever is total produced, I'll just divide this into the 100 units that I want to have signed up, and that's how you guys then apply that to the meters or the bills?
Yeah. So yeah, and I just want to make a quick language clarification. It's not virtual net metering, it is virtual metering. So I just want to clarify that because
Good point. Yep, sure.
yeah, I'm sure you know we don't do net metering in Austin. So 100% of the production from the solar array would be distributed according to the allocations provided to Austin Energy. The standard for allocations based on kind of PUC standards is by square footage. So you would do a percentage distribution based on square footage. So that way, if you have, you know, 3-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, and 1-bedroom units, that they're sort of getting distributed according to square footage. That's kind of the standard used by the PUC in particular for water charge distribution, if that makes sense. So that was that's where we've decided to start. It's something that we're open to reevaluating in the future, but it is actually a non-insignificant lift to input the allocations into the billing system. So it is something that, you know, once they're in, we would like them to stay for as long as possible, because we have to actually charge a pretty significant fee of $20 per unit for that change, for changing that that number. So.
Okay. So the way to look at shared solar is really just one version of one interconnection option is what it is, right? If the property is set up such that you can interconnect per unit, that's great. And if not, if it's better to do kind of, you know, whatever 100 kilowatts into 100 units all into one interconnection, that might be a different option, but it's all under the same incentive program.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, that's why I realize it's a little confusing, because for, you know, literally years, we've been talking about the shared solar program, but I want to move away from talking about shared solar as a program. It's really a functionality that we can enable for, you know, multifamily installations.
And it has to be, though, on the property, right? So this isn't, because shared solar in the past was, hey, I could do this ground mount over here and then I could.
No, that has never been the case. Like the shared solar has always had to be on within the property boundaries. That's required by the utility. And actually, anyway, there's a longer conversation perhaps to be had about that, but that the existing shared solar in the field is not, the solar arrays are on property. It's just that the interconnection, the point of coupling between the solar array and the grid happens to be on the utility side of the meter. And that allows us to sort of easily pull those credits, you know, understand the generation from that resource, pull those credits out and distribute them across the property.
Got it. And then to Aubrey's point, is there a total number, like max number of units that you will give an incentive to, say on the, call it regular program, 60 cents per watt? Are you saying is 500 the max units, or no, just bring them in and you guys will evaluate them?
So this is what I wanted to clarify, is the 60 cents per watt is just for the total, is for the array. It doesn't matter how many units you're interconnecting to. I don't care, basically. Say you have a development of townhomes and you have 100 townhomes, right, in your development, and you're going to put some amount of solar on each of those roofs and you're going to interconnect all of them. From our perspective, we are interested in knowing how many units you're serving. We're interested in knowing your total system size, but we're not going to nitpick these sort of individual, you know, is it 2.7 kilowatts or is it 3 kilowatts per unit? Like we have done that in the past where we've paid a lot of attention to that specific detail, but we're now kind of just trying to look at it a little bit more in aggregate, if that makes sense.
I'm still not clear. Are you saying the max incentive is 60 cents a watt times 5 kilowatts? So even if I do 100.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Right. No. Okay. I'm sorry. I misunderstood the question. Yeah. So it's 60 cents a watt. And if you did, and and then it's 5 kilowatts per unit, right? Okay, right. So, but again, it's an aggregate. So if you put, like, we don't, the maximum amount that you could get is 5 times whatever number of units, times the incentive amount, if that makes sense. Sorry, I think I misunderstood your
That's
original
okay.
question. But
So
yeah,
I have a
if
10,
you have, if you have 100, if, let's say if you have 10 units, right? And you put we will incentivize you up to 50 kilowatts for that.
right. And but each unit will get, if you're interconnecting per unit, each one will get 60 cents per watt up to 5 kilowatts.
Right. So, right. The unit owners don't get it though, right? It's the property owner. Right?
Yep.
Yes, correct. Yeah. So if you have 10 units on your property, you can get up to, let me do the calculation really quick.
I think that's what, $3,000.
Yeah, exactly. So 30,000. So that's kind of the cap. And again, that's to ensure that we don't, I mean, you know, we want to make sure that this program is, you know, designed to really encourage density, like a lot of the programs in Austin. And so so we're kind of just trying to dovetail in with that general ethos.
No, I think it's great. I mean, it's awesome, honestly, guys. Like, I think it's a really great way. I am studying multifamily right now, and this is the coolest program I've heard of. So, and I think it'll be very successful, hopefully. I mean, I know it's hard to get to, you know, these property owners and developers and things like that, but I think they'd be very excited to be, I'm doing a bunch of them, honestly, with big developers. And they love the fact that they can differentiate themselves by offering their tenants discounts on their bills. And how you get there is, you know, there's multiple ways to get there. This incentive is, yeah, I think is wonderful. So it's just, I think our question was, hey, it's one thing to have 10 units and each one, you know, gets $3,000. If somebody comes in and says, I've got 100 units, is each one, and they're all getting their individual interconnections, is that still then $3,000, you know, if they're all getting 5, which typically they don't get 5 kilowatts each, but is that the potential that you guys would pay out that incentive for up to, you know?
Yeah. So one thing we haven't discussed here, and that we sort of intentionally left it off, but there will be, like, this incentive is not in perpetuity, the 60 cents and $1 a watt. So we will end up putting some sort of, we will publish a ramp down schedule. There's some things in flux within the utility right now. So we are trying to figure out exactly what to tag that ramp down schedule to, but it will probably look very similar to our CBI program. So to your point, the access is infinite until the well is dry, I guess is my answer. So if there's, you know, say we set a program cap or a tier cap of 3 megawatts, we are happy to spend the money up to that 3 megawatts, and then the rebate level will get reduced.
Got it. Yep.
So,
awesome, guys. Yeah, that's helpful. But that's not defined yet, is what you're saying. You're just, that will get defined at some point. But right now,
it's in the process of being defined. I would say for planning purposes, I would assume, you know, that we're probably going to tag a total multifamily, you know, per tier. We're probably going to tag it to around 3 megawatts. We're trying to sort of work within, you know, some of the sort of changing landscape in the city to make sure that that number makes sense. That's how our commercial CBI program is set up, is to tier down at 3 megawatts. And it would look a lot like that. So we would probably drop the nonprofit level by 10 cents. So it would go down to 90 cents per watt. And the regular program would go down by 5 cents. So it would go down to 55 cents a watt. Just, I mean, but we have not finalized. Anyway, for the purposes of this conversation, we just have not finalized what that number is going to be and whether it's going to be tied to the broader residential program, et cetera. So just know that it is subject to change, but we will let you know by the time that we launch. We want to be really clear that I don't want to leave you guys hanging out in the breeze, wondering whether or not you're going to fit into the tier. So ultimately, it will be treated a lot like our commercial CBI. And for those of you unfamiliar with that, we do try to sort of send out communications when there's, after each megawatt has been consumed. So.
Thank you, guys. I've been bogarting the questions here, so appreciate the help.
No problem. Great questions. Thank you.
Yeah, a quick question. So as I understand under this program, the multifamily owner would get the 60 cents a watt if they're a for-profit, and then the lessees of the apartments or townhomes, whatever they are, get the value of solar applicable to their bill. We do quite a few. I think we probably have across the state, 30 or so apartment complexes, and obviously most of them just do it for the common areas. Would there be a separate setup if one of our apartments wanted to do this and still have solar for their common areas? How would you combine that?
The common areas have their own commercial meter. So you would just have a separate interconnection for the commercial meter, and that incentive would go through the commercial program.
Okay, but these the multifamily that would be installed ahead of the commercial meter, like you're saying here, and then you would still have
it would be behind the commercial meter and follow the guidelines of the commercial incentive program.
Right, but this program here, the shared solar, is on the other side. Okay.
Yeah, it's in front of the meter. Yeah.
Okay.
I want to speak to Kaiba's question. So developments with over 500 units are definitely eligible to go with shared solar. Probably we would need to treat it as multiple projects. I think it's unlikely. I could be wrong. And certainly if a scenario arises where we have a development that has more than 500 units, but is going to be able to interconnect their array at one interconnection, then we can revisit this. But the 500 unit cap is actually a limitation of the billing system. So, and our ability to like input the information. So we can revisit that if a project comes up that is serving more than 500 units. Thanks, Joey. Yeah, so let me just say, like, it's a limitation of the effort to input all of this into the billing system. So that is where that 500 unit cap comes from. We have never seen, we've never seen a project with more than that, but if as those come up, we can revisit this. It is something that we will need to work on a few things from a process perspective on our side. But for now, we kind of just wanted to make sure that we can get this out and serve the vast majority of projects that are coming through. Glad to hear about your taco, Audie.
So when you say not eligible commercial metered community spaces, and then I apologize if I missed this, but I think there was a question about common spaces within multifamily properties or common meters. Did you answer that question? So is that when you say not eligible commercial metered community spaces, does that mean the commons area would not be eligible in this program?
So the shared solar,
this is a per unit kind of deal.
Right. The shared solar functionality is intended for residential accounts.
Yeah.
And I know that we have had this discussion before, Tim, so would love for you to add some more color But I think, the expectation is that if there is an additional, portion of the solar array that, the desire is to have that serve the common areas and that commercial meter, is that would need to sort of be treated as a separate project.
Yeah, that makes sense based on the goals of this program.
Yeah, we really want to, ensure that the shared solar functionality in particular is providing access to, we are trying, part of the goal that we're trying to reach here with shared solar is providing access to the benefits of solar for traditionally underserved communities, and very specifically, and perhaps also broadly, people who do not own their own roofs. So beyond, the affordable housing or accessible housing piece, it's really about creating a pathway to access the benefits of solar for people who don't have, can't afford to buy a house in Austin, which is most people apparently. So.
But you're discriminating against the common spaces, but I understand.
Well, I mean,
I'm joking. No, it's
we have a very robust
most
commercial
so.
program to serve them
Yep.
that right now is in lockstep with this. So the right, we're discriminating against the building owners taking all of the credits for themselves.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Poor defenseless building owners.
So another quick question on the 5 kilowatt. Obviously, is there a limit on the offset like you might see in residential? I mean, I think obviously at 5 kilowatt, that would probably more than power the offset of a common, typical multifamily unit, particularly an apartment. But is there any concern about, if the system consistently provides?
Yeah, the requirement we will continue with the requirement of 110% as it is with the other programs. And that has less to do with anything really specific to the credits, although certainly, it is relevant insofar as the credits are not interchangeable for cash. So that's part of it. And part of it is about sort of, wanting to, be mindful of like hosting capacity and equipment constraints. We want to make sure that as many folks can have solar as possible.
Thank you.
I have a single family question.
Go ahead, Farwell.
Hi. So the developers, the developer I'm thinking of, they build solar standard with every unit that's rebatable. But let's see, they don't, there's not always an owner. Like they've not always passed the ownership of the building to the homeowner when we're ready to commission the system. So who would the rebate go to in your single family multifamily program?
So I think what you're asking, and I'm just trying to, I'm confused a little bit about the question, so I apologize. I think what you're asking is, let's say it's the townhome scenario. Is that what you're asking? Or are you asking about like a duplex scenario? Or are you talking about like if you're a developer and you're putting solar on a bunch of single family houses, who gets the rebate?
Yeah, that's my question.
The last one. Okay. Yeah. So in that case, the developer would get the rebate, the person purchasing the solar for the buildings.
Okay.
And does that answer your question, Farwell?
It does. Thank you.
Awesome. Kaiba, I'm a little confused about your question. Would you like to speak to it? It seems like you kind of want to solicit feedback from the broader group, probably not just from myself.
Yeah. I mean, I just thought it was, I think I had previously asked that question about, the common areas that might have a commercial meter being able to participate in utilize shared solar. And I understand that's not how it's set up in the billing system. But since somebody was asking about it, I can imagine commercial scenarios, office buildings or, strip malls or whatever, where perhaps there's similar challenges in terms of split incentives and, even just having, not having ownership of the roof, so I'm just curious if others here encounter those kind of challenges in the commercial space. And of course, increasingly, there are now buildings that have both residential and commercial. So, you might have a 4 or 5 story building that has a lot of residential, also has commercial. If the building owner wanted to prioritize one versus the other, I'm curious what people are seeing out there.
I think that you bring up a really good point, Kaiba, and certainly one that, I think we'll have to continue exploring. From a program perspective, I mean, I can't speak for what people are seeing out there in the broader community, but we are aware of challenges like triple net leases, and there are a lot of challenges for how to plug into the growing sort of mixed use space for sure. I think our our goal right now is to sort of to create an opening offering and continue exploring opportunities for ways to better plug in with some of these more complex structures moving forward. That's all I can say from a program perspective. Tim, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll say, we're happy to have more discussions about the commercial side. It's definitely it would be another separate effort because commercial accounts are different in our billing system, but it doesn't inherently solve the split incentive problem. But if you can help me understand how it would, that would, I definitely want to have those conversations, but I just don't, I've thought through it quite a bit and I can't figure out how it solves that split incentive problem. And, one of the problems that we're solving here, the main one, is, the number of interconnections. If to do a multifamily 100-unit project, we would have to have 100 interconnections. And so we can do it. This solves that by allowing that to happen with one. But with commercial, that's just, it doesn't really happen that way. So, but we could talk about what, advantages we could soak out of rolling this out in commercial. But I want to have that conversation separately because it's just a different scenario.
Yeah, I mean, just to follow up on your comment there, I agree. The shared solar does not address the split incentive. I think that was just part of the presentation in terms of the upfront incentive. So I agree. They're linked but separate issues. I think that in a lot of cases the commercial doesn't have the same challenges, but of course there are some buildings where it isn't perhaps a simple thing to serve all of the commercial spaces. But I get we're focused on residential here today, and that's great.
Well, I know we're coming up on the end of our time here. Is there anything, this has been really helpful, I know, for our side, certainly in understanding how to better explain the structure of the incentives, and, recipients of the incentives. And I think this has been really helpful for us to understand some opportunities for clarifying language. Does anybody have any other comments, questions, concerns, ideas that they want to throw out here in our last few minutes?
I had a quick thought on, I noticed affordable housing seems to be, the focus, but a lot of multifamily going in the Austin areas won't be listed on those programs. Any thought about extending this to the non-affordable housing, multifamily units, just from several of the perspective you talked about is, unable to afford homes and how do you get these on the units? I think end of the day for the builder, which we work quite a bit with, you talk about one incentive of, hey, we have solar, this is a good marketing program. I think when they can do their commercial spaces, that kind of does that. So we're kind of looking here, what does incentivize the builder to provide solar that the tenant gets to take credit for, but the builder doesn't? And what's that cost to the builder to provide that versus the incentive? And it's on the face of it, on some of the the affordable housing and the open market kind of a little bit different, but trying to work through if there was more incentive for the builder to do that on some of these new multifamily programs going in, or is it just affordable housing that has the most incentive to do it?
So,
Okay.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
The incentive to the builder is that he can sell that apartment or hipster place or whatever you call it more because it has solar on it.
Correct, but he already has that with the commercial program, which is probably quite a bit lower cost than doing it for all the residential.
No, that's a good point. I agree.
Which is, like I said, we'll have over 30 installs, and that I would say that's probably 80% of the motivating factor was they can show, they have the screen in the leasing area and you can see the solar being used every day. But that's as much as, it's not the cost savings on the electricity net per se, but it's just they're promoting themselves as green and what they have.
I think that, I'm not in the business of renting units, but I think that the marketing play would be that, the solar array is reducing your utility bills as a tenant. And that then, somewhat justifies a higher rent payment.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I'm saying. I think 11 cents per kilowatt hour in the Austin energy area. And if you save, I'm just saying you do the numbers, it's, I'm trying to figure out how material that is versus the cost, minus the 60 cents for the, and what the solar pricing where it is these days, what that cost is, the cost benefit from the builder versus how much they can really get back to the.
Yeah, so essentially, rather than recovering those costs on their own electric bills, they recover them through the increased rent payment that's reflective of the savings to the customers on their electric bills.
Correct. And so we're owned by 10 family offices. That's all they do, multifamily. They have $2 billion under management. So I have this conversation with them a lot. Not just Austin Energy, we're all across Texas and Maine and stuff, but it's a common theme that I run into. So I'm just good to hear your thoughts on it.
So Camilla, the answer to your question is that a property owner is welcome to install solar to offset the commercial meter on their property for the common areas. They would just go through the commercial program. So the common areas generally are served by commercial meters. And so the incentive program for those is actually currently in lockstep with the multifamily program. I expect that they will diverge as that program, the commercial capacity-based program, comes to its capacity cap, and will ramp down, of course. But they would need to have a distinct interconnection to serve their commercial areas. And Farwell, I spoke about it in the chat, but I wanted to follow up on your question. Let me sync up with the team, and we'll send out a memo to all of the contractors indicating when we can move to running the single family units through the Resi program. There's no like adjustments that need to be made on our side necessarily, just want to make sure that we give everybody clear communication at the same time. And with that, I'm noting that we are 3 minutes over. I encourage those of you who come up with questions moving forward, please feel free to send them to solar@austinenergy.com. We're excited to hear from you and hear your feedback and any further ideas you may have about how we can continue to improve our programs and reach those hard to reach parts of Austin. We really appreciate all of the work and thought that you guys put into this, and we look forward to continuing to evolve our programs to meet everybody's needs.